How do you respond when you run into somebody who has thoroughly done you wrong and they haven't sought forgiveness and now they need your help? How do you feel when you realize that the tribulations that you may be going through could be because you've done something wrong to somebody in your past? Well, sit back and get ready. Kick your feet up, because we're about to watch the epic battle of love versus guilt. Welcome to another edition of Sunday School with the Deek. I am Deacon Wallace Hill IV, proud member of the Mount Pisgah Missionary Baptist Church, where my father, the Honorable Wallace Hill III, is my pastor. Now, as I tell you every week, I am so happy to be coming into your living rooms, your cell phones, your computers, your televisions, and your tablets once again. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening each week as we break down the Sunday school lesson based on the International Lesson Series. And the page is just continuing to grow and grow, and everybody seems to be enjoying the lessons. And I just want to say thank you to you all, because you motivate me to keep trying to dive into that word a little bit further. So for those of you that are new to this channel, do me a favor and hit the little subscribe button at the bottom of the page, and then hit that little bell next to it, and each week you'll be notified. Ding, ding, ding! The Deek has uploaded another lesson. So we're in our third week of our new quarter called Love for One Another. And in our first 2 weeks, we've been concentrating on Joseph in our unit called Struggles of Love. And we've surely seen some struggles of love in the life of Joseph. You know, Joseph's brothers struggle to love him because they despise him, because their jealousy for their brother made them plot to kill him, which caused a snowball effect of various bad events that happened to Joseph. He was sold to the Midianites, who in turn sold him to the Egyptians. He was accused of rape after trying to do the right thing, and then he was thrown in jail, and he was let down by one of the inmates that he helped. But then when we left off last week, in chapter 41, he was just made the number 2 man in all of Egypt. So only Pharaoh was above him. And this week it gets even better. So our lesson ended last week on verse 52 of chapter 41. Our lesson this week picks up in verse 6 of chapter 42. So I'll read the final 5 verses of chapter 42. So we'll be caught up. And if you want to catch up to the other 2 lessons leading up to this, then hit the stop button. Go to your little magnifying glass at the top of your page. Type in Sunday School with the Deek, Issues of Love, or Sunday School with the Deek, God Rewards Obedience, and you can watch those lessons. Anyway, let's get to our reading. Chapter 41, verse 53. I'll be reading from the New Living Translation. Verse 53 says, "At last, the 7 years of bumper crops throughout the land of Egypt came to an end. Then the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had predicted. The famine also struck all the surrounding countries, but throughout Egypt there was plenty of food. Eventually, however, the famine spread throughout the land of Egypt as well. And when the people cried out to Pharaoh for food, he told them, 'Go see Joseph and do whatever he tells you.' So with the severe famine everywhere, Joseph opened up the storehouses and distributed grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout the land of Egypt. And the people from all around came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe throughout the world. Now we move to chapter 42, verse 1. When Jacob heard that grain was available in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why are you standing around looking at one another? I've heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy enough grain to keep us alive. Otherwise, we'll die." So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to Egypt to buy grain. But Jacob wouldn't let Joseph's younger brother, Benjamin, go with them for fear some harm might come to him. Now stop, pause. He is playing favoritism again. You would think he learned his lesson from how he treated Joseph. But my bet is he hasn't connected the dots. Some of us have things that we go through in our life and we don't even do a self-evaluation. Not saying that we could ever know why things happen to us, but I always say we should do a self-check when we go through stuff. Say, is God trying to tell me something? Is God trying to move me somewhere or to something? Jacob has lost his son Joseph, at least he thinks he has, but he hasn't changed his ways. He's playing favoritism to Benjamin because Benjamin is by the woman that he loved. He's like, I'll send the other 10. I don't care if I lose them, but if I lose Benjamin, it'll be a bad thing. Verse 5. So Jacob's sons arrived in Egypt along with the others to buy food, for the famine was in Canaan as well. Okay, so let's set the scene. The brothers who treated Joseph so bad, the brothers who felt like they got rid of their dreaming brother problem when they sold him, those same brothers are about to be confronted by Joseph. Or we found out last week, his new Egyptian name is Zaphanath Paneah. This should be an awesome lesson. Let's go ahead and get started with verse 6. Here we go. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and it was he that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. It says, and Joseph was the governor of all the land, not just the land of Canaan mentioned in verse 5, but the land of Egypt under Pharaoh. And as I said before, Joseph he was the chief. He was the chief and sole authoritarian over the crops, especially the affairs of the dispersal of all this crops, right? So, and it was he that was the one who's selling to all the people that came to buy from Egypt. And it wasn't just the people of Egypt, because they were from all over. And word had started to spread around the world that there was food in Egypt. And so Joseph's brethren came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. Does that sound familiar? Then his brethren said to him, shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And his brethren said to him, at least they waited till the dream was finished before they started talking to him. They said, shall you indeed reign over us? Now, they highly offended by this dream, and for him telling them the dream, for that matter. So they seem to have understood the dream better than Joseph did. They understood it to mean that Joseph would have dominion over them or power over them to the point where they would have to bow down in his presence. See, they bowed down. Not only bowed their knees like the Egyptians did, but they laid prostrate to the ground. Their whole bodies stretching out their hands and their feet and touching the ground with their faces. They submitted themselves to him in the most humble way they could. And they knew that their entire existence depended on this Egyptian official giving them some food. So they tried to give him the most honor that they could. And with that, unbeknownst to them, they were fulfilling the dream of bowing down to their brother Joseph one day. The whole purpose of them plotting to kill Joseph and ultimately selling him to the Midianites was to destroy his dream. And so I just want to say there was no way they thought they were going to ever bow down to their brother. And listen, when I say God has something for you and nobody can take it from you, the route you take to get there may not be what you think it's going to be or what you planned on it to be, but you will get there. Joseph didn't know how his brothers was going to bow down to him, but it happened. And there's so much that happened between there. He would have never picked the route that he got there, but he's there now. So, and it's happening right before our eyes. Go to verse 7. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan, to buy food. So when Joseph saw his brethren among the crowd, who had traveled here to Egypt to get food, when he saw them, the Bible said he made himself strange to them. Right? He didn't want them to know who he was. And why would Joseph do this? And I wish we was in class right now. I wish I had a class in front of me, because this would be some excellent discussion trying to figure out what people think about why Joseph did this. And see, the Lord is putting something on my heart right now is to do something like a Deek speak in the middle of the week on topics such as this, just to get people, see where people stand on certain things from the lesson. But I'm still not sure how to do it or when to do it, but he's definitely working on me there. So pray with me as we explore what to do next. Anyway, why would Joseph make himself strange to his brothers? Is he still bad? Last week we read how he named his firstborn Manasseh, which means to forget. So so he's not holding on to bitterness, or at least I hope he's not. See, last week we saw how Pharaoh said Joseph had the Spirit of God in him. Remember that? So we can assume the Holy Spirit is working through Joseph. And so sometimes God doesn't reveal himself to even us, right? Though he's standing right there looking at us. God knows us. And sometimes he just watches us to see where we are mentally, not physically, because he can see you physically, but he wants to know where you are mentally. And we may be standing right in front of God, asking him for something, but where's our head at? Or we can take God out of the equation and say maybe Joseph was being petty or playing games with these brothers. What do you think about that? Something to think about. So Joseph speaks roughly to them and says, Where are you coming from? And they said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. So, and we don't know if he was asking everybody that walked up to him this question, but he asked them, and now that he's asked them, at least he found out something very important, that his family's still living where he grew up back in Canaan. Verse 8, And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew him not. So now it's been 20 years since he's seen his brothers. You see, it was 13 when he became second in charge. It had been 13 years. And then there were 7 years of plenty in the land. That makes 20. And now we can assume it's at least been maybe a year of the famine before they finally ran out of food to the point where they had to go try to find some. So let's just say it's been 21 years. And back then, Joseph didn't have a beard. Now he's clothed as a prince. And he's speaking the Egyptian language. And he has so much power and so much authority. And he has such a retinue all around him attending to him. Ding, ding, ding. Word for the day. Let's get some help from from Alex, the word girl.
Deek, today's word for the day is retinue, spelled Retinue. Retinue is a noun that means a group of advisors, assistants, or others accompanying an important person.
Thanks, Alex, the word girl. So, Joseph has a beard, he's clothed in royal regalia, and he has a retinue of people around him. So with all this going on, why would his brothers ever recognize him? They could never fathom their brother, who they thought they sold into slavery, being the governor of the land of Egypt. And here, Joseph shows us another picture of Jesus. See, Jesus sees who we are long before we see who he is. And he recognizes you. And get this, he still loves you. That's a preview. Joseph still loves his brothers. Anyway, verse 9. And Joseph remembers the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said to them, ye are spies. To see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And as they lay there prostrate to the ground, asking for food, Joseph remembers the dream he had 21 years ago about their sheaves bowing down to his sheaf, and the sun and the moon and the stars all bowing down in obeisance to him. Do you think Joseph was playing games with his brothers? Twisting the knife, kind of, so to speak? Count me in the camp that doesn't think he was. Now, that's just the Deek saying that. Because look at this, y'all. You know, all of us remember the dream when I read verse 7. As soon as they bowed down, we all start remembering the dream. Joseph doesn't remember the dream till verse 9. So I think the dream was the furthest thing from his head. And, you know, in some commentaries that I read, believe that if it were up to Joseph, he would have revealed himself right then and there. But it's here that God recalled the dream to him. And I think God is guiding him to be part of the correction process for these brothers. Maybe even towards restoring their relationship. Who knows? I don't know. So sometimes God has to use ways that we may think are harsh to cause us to get to be where he wants us to be. You know, and when he does that, we can't resent him for that. Because if you think about it, it was the hardness of our hearts, or these brothers' hearts, that caused him to have to treat us this way anyway. Anyway, I digress. Joseph says unto them, you are spies. You come here to see the nakedness of the land. And Joseph calls them spies here. Said they came to see how bad off the land of Egypt was, to try to find out their weak spots and try to find out where they're vulnerable for an attack. Let's go to verse 10. And they said unto him, nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. They tell Joseph that they simply came to get some food. But look at this. They call him Lord. They call themselves his servants. So funny how 20 years ago it was, oh, look at the dreamer. Look at the dreamer. Now it's, Lord, we are your servants. Woo! Ha! All I can say is, wow. Let's go. Verse 11. We are all one man's son. We are true men. Thy servants are no spies. They called themselves servants again, y'all. Verse 12. And he said unto him, no, but to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. So Joseph continues to insist that they came here to see the nakedness of the land. Verse 13. And they said, thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. And so they said to Joseph, thy servants are 12 brothers, and the son of one man in the land of Canaan. So, and our youngest brother is at home with our dad, and one is not. And so now, I'm not sure why they're offering up all this information, but maybe this is what you do when you are trying to convince someone in authority that you're not lying to them. You tell everything, right? But at least Joseph gets a ton of information out of this. He knows that his younger brother is alive now. He's got the same mom. This is the brother that he shares the same mom with. And look, the brothers even worked Joseph into the conversation. They said, one is not. Personally, I'm surprised they even mentioned that they had a 12th brother. They say that he is not. Look who tried to join. Look who joined. Who joined the Sunday school lesson? You want to get to Sunday school? Okay. Anyway. So I'm personally surprised that they even mentioned they had a 12th brother. They say he is not. He is not what? He is not at home with. He is not at home with their daddy. He's not alive. He's not what? I don't understand. So I wonder how this made Joseph feel, knowing that they were speaking about him. I don't know if they thought Joseph was dead, but maybe they had made themselves believe that he was. And you know how people lie so much they start to believe a lie. Maybe saying Joseph was dead, but it didn't really make him dead if they said it. You know, that's like saying Jesus isn't alive, doesn't mean that he's dead, right? Jesus is alive among us every day, just like Joseph was sitting there among his brothers. Verse 14, and Joseph said unto them, that is it that I spake unto you, saying, you are spies. And Joseph called them spies. Regardless of how much they keep trying to convince them that they are not spies, Joseph acts as though this has proved to him that they are spies, because the more they keep talking, the more the stuff gets revealed, right? Why didn't you tell me you had two brothers to begin with? Two other brothers to begin with. Why didn't you tell me your father didn't send all of y'all? Why did you keep one at home? You guys are lying. You guys are spies. Verse 15. Hereby ye shall be proved. By the life of Pharaoh you should not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. So he says, hereby you shall be proved. Prove means test here, okay? He is going to test their story since they can't seem to get their story right. So he says that by the life of Pharaoh, I'm not letting you guys go unless your other brother comes here. By the life of Pharaoh is kind of like an oath, right? Many countries did that back then, like swearing by the life of their king. Verse 16, send one of you and let him fetch your brother, and ye shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved, whether there be any truth in you, or else the life of Pharaoh, surely ye are spies. So Joseph gives them his plan. He says, I'm going to let one of you go back home and bring your other brother back here to prove that you're telling the truth. All of the rest of you will sit here in prison until the one I send comes back with your brother. And by the life of by the life of Pharaoh, if your story is not true, then I will know that you are spies. And so this is Joseph's way of getting to his younger brother Benjamin. You know, all these guys bowing down to him are his half-brothers. But Benjamin is his full brother, and he wants to see him. And this is the way he was going to accomplish it. Verse 17. And he put them all together into ward 3 days. So he threw all of them in jail for 3 days, y'all. He kind of gave them some time to consult with each other, you know, maybe play rock, paper, scissors to see who's going to draw the short straw, or who's going to be the lucky one to get to go home and tell their dad the bad news. You know, Daddy Jacob is not going to be happy to know that he got to give up his youngest son after he had already lost Joseph. And the boys know what Joseph means to their dad. I mean, that's why he ain't even there with them. Daddy Jacob's probably going to be like, why did y'all even tell him y'all had another brother? Did he ask you, did you have another brother? You mean you just offered that information for nothing? You big... 18. And Joseph said unto them the third day, this do and live, for I fear God. And Joseph said unto them on the third day. So now 3 days have gone by, and Joseph goes back to them. While the brothers had time to think about maybe who's going to be the lucky one to go back home, Joseph had some time to think of too, y'all. So he says, do this and live. But what he says next really, piqued my antennas up. He says, for I fear God. So no matter what camp you were in, right? Whether you think Joseph was being petty or vindictive or playing games with his brothers, or whether you believe that he was being led by God to treat his brothers this way, whatever camp you're in, here in verse 18, he brings all of us back together, right? So, because if Joseph was playing games, God got to him in those 3 days. Just like God got to Jonah after sitting in that belly of that fish for 3 days. God can get to you if you sit around and he gets you by yourself for a few days. He says, I fear God. And if there was anything that should have given the brothers an inkling of hope or an idea that this might be Joseph, it should have been this. Why would an Egyptian ruler be talking about fearing God? They don't believe in the true and living God. They worship all kinds of gods. But I want you to notice is this. Joseph always gave credit to God. I mean, even back when he was interpreting those dreams, he would always make it clear before he told them what the dream meant, that it wasn't him interpreting the dream, it was God interpreting the dream. And he always gives God credit and glory as the one directing his life. And for him to say, I fear God, should have given them some comfort to know that he would be fair with them. That he would be fair in his dealings with them. That he wasn't going to hurt them. Because if you fear God, you don't hurt people. Right? And so that, that he wouldn't do anything wrong to them because he feared God. So, we should be the same way. We fear God. If we really fear God, we shouldn't be trying to hurt anybody. Let's go to verse 19. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your houses. So this is why he says, I fear God, I think. Because Joseph has completely changed his mind on how he's going to carry out his plan that he came up with. His original plan was to send one of them back to retrieve his brothers, and he was going to keep the other 9 in jail. Now his plan is to send the 9 home and keep one of them here in jail. So if you fear God, I'm telling you, he will weigh heavily on your mind and your heart when you may not be doing something the way he wants you to be doing it, right? Now, we can do what God tells us to do, but sometimes we want to add our own little twist to it. We got to be careful not to do what God tells us to do and then add your own little twist to it. Just ask Moses. Remember the children of Israel wanted water when they was in the wilderness? And by this point, Moses was sick and tired of their ungrateful you-know-whats. And so God told Moses to speak to the rock and give them some water. And Moses didn't think that they deserved water because how bad they acted. So he went over to the rock and kicked the rock instead of speaking to the rock. But water still came out when he kicked the rock, so all the people got to drink water, but Moses never got to go to the promised land for that. All the stuff he had endured from Pharaoh and the 10 plagues and getting them out of Egypt and the Red Sea and 40 years of in the wilderness, he did not get to go into the promised land because he kicked the rock instead of speaking to the rock. So don't add your little twist to what God tells you to do, because he did get to look at the promised land. That's where we get the name of our church from, the Mount Pisgah, because Mount Pisgah is the highest point of Mount Nebo. And so he said, Moses, you can go to Mount Pisgah and look at the promised land, but you don't get to go. So my point is, if Joseph's original plan wasn't what God wanted, then now after 3 days, Joseph's fear of God made him do what God wanted him to do, and that's just to keep one brother here. And he says, if you be true men, if you are the men that you say you are, then one of you will stay here, and the rest of you get to go get your brother. And here, take some food for your houses so that you can eat. And you see, this way, it also benefits the families back home. If he had only sent one brother back, he wouldn't be able to carry all this food to them, right? So Joseph is not holding any bitterness here in his heart, y'all. He's sending food back, not only for his father, but for all his brothers' families. All these brothers that tried to kill him, he's sending food back for their families. His nieces and nephews that he has never met. His sisters-in-law that he's never met. God is good, y'all. You just got to be fair with him and do as he pleases and not act up when you go through stuff. Don't hold bitterness in your heart. And you can be like Joseph and be giving to the same person that tried to put their foot on your neck. Anyway, verse 20. But bring your youngest brother unto me, so shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. So he says, bring your brother Benjamin back. Bring your brother Benjamin back. When you come back for more corn, and it will prove that you guys are not spies and you won't die. See, because it was customary back then that if you got caught and you was a spy, death. And so, and it says, and they did so, meaning they went about to carry out the task that Joseph had told them to. But watch what happens next in verse 21. And they said to one another, we are verily guilty concerning our brother, and in that we saw the anguish in his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. So they said to one another, see, the brothers started to talk amongst themselves after Joseph has given them their instructions. And so let's listen in to what they're saying. It says, hey, so we are guilty concerning our brother, and that we saw his anguish of his soul when he was besought us, and we heard him not. Whew. Now, we're being led in onto some details to what happened when they threw him in that pit. And look at how his brothers describe the scene. They say, we are guilty concerning our brother. Now, this happened 21 years ago. And it's taken up until now for them to recognize their guilt. Remember, these are the same people who went and had lunch right after they threw him in the pit. They went and had some Jimmy Johns and some chips right after they threw him in the pit. They didn't feel nothing back then. And for 21 years, they ain't felt nothing. But now, they say they saw the anguish in Joseph's eyes. And that was either when they threw him in the pit or when they sold him to for 20 pieces of silver. And see, now we're getting all the details. And for some reason, this feels a little bit worse than when I read it in chapter 37. Because you got to picture Joseph having anguish in his eyes. And it says, from these brothers, they had anguish in Joseph's eyes, and anguish is severe pain or suffering. And they said they saw it in his eyes and heard it in his voice. It says that Joseph besought them, meaning he was begging them not to do what they were doing. I can only imagine how Joseph looked as he was either in that pit and saw them walk away, or as they gave him that 20 pieces of silver for Joseph and the Midianites took him to Egypt. He says he was begging and pleading with his brothers. And I just think that's a shame. to do that to your brother when he's done absolutely nothing? All he did was live. It wasn't his fault that his dad favored him. It wasn't his fault that his dad made him a coat of many colors. By show of hands, how many watching this video would give back the coat your father gave you and not wear it? If you raised your hand and said you wouldn't wear it, let me ask you another question. Would you turn down a blessing from your Father God when he gives you one? Isn't that the same concept? God shows us favor all the time. We are all his children, but some people have better cars than others. Some people have better homes than others. Some people have better jobs than others. But we're all his children. So how many of you would refuse a blessing from God because he didn't bless everybody else the same way? So I can't blame Joseph for rocking his coat of many colors. Anyway, they hated on Joseph for something that Joseph had nothing to do with. And now they feel bad about it as they say, this is why this is happening to him. They're saying this is why this is happening to us because we did this to Joseph. And if you're a child of God, you ought to do what these brothers are doing. You ought to evaluate your life when you go through some things. You ought to try to see where you may have made some mistakes along the way. And you will probably be 100% wrong as to why God is putting you through this. But at least you look back at your life and you see some mistakes that you made so that you won't make them again. Remember, Isaiah 55:8-9 says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than yours, and my thoughts than yours." And so you can't say, oh, because I sinned here, God is doing this to me. Or because I did this, God is doing this to me. It don't work like that. You can't connect the dots. So you'll never know why you go through the things that you go through, but you can at least say that God is punished. You can at least evaluate your life and say, maybe I need to fix some things. Only God knows why things happen. But you should still do like these brothers did and evaluate your past. I remember, I tell this story a lot because it made a big impression on me, but I remember when my boss tried to fire me about, it was 12 years ago or so. And I had done nothing wrong, absolutely zero. But yet I was on the verge of being fired. And I started thinking about all the wrong that I had done in my life. And I was saying that this happened to me because I did this, or this is probably happening to me because I did that. And, but in the end, I wouldn't be on your computer screen right now. I wouldn't be on your tablet right now. I won't be on your phone right now. I won't be on your television right now. I wouldn't be the Deek right now if that terrible thing hadn't happened to me. Because it was because of what I went through with that I went to my pastor and said, can I teach adult Sunday school? And I was already teaching children, but God wanted more out of me. So don't always think that you're going through something because you did something. It could be true, but it could not be true as well. God may be trying to move you to a higher place. Next verse. 22. And Reuben answered, saying, spake I not unto you, saying, do not sin against the child, and ye would not hear. Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. See, people back then were just like we are right now today. Reuben is the brother, not a sandwich. Reuben jumps up and says, I told y'all we shouldn't have done it. I told y'all we shouldn't have did it. I told y'all we shouldn't have sinned against our brother. But y'all wouldn't listen to me. And now it's coming back to haunt us. And if this Egyptian governor don't kill us, you know Daddy gonna kill us. They feel what's happening to them is the vengeance of God upon them for what they did to Joseph. 23. And they knew not Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. So here's the thing that we didn't know. Joseph could hear everything that they were talking about. They had no idea Joseph could understand them because the whole time he had been talking to them, calling them spies and everything else through an interpreter. Joseph sitting there getting the lowdown on everything because they're speaking in his native tongue, which he knows every word that they're saying, even though now he's speaking Egyptian, and he's been speaking Egyptian for over 20 years. But watch what he does, verse 24. And he turned himself about from them and wept and returned to them again and communed with them and took from them Simeon and bound him before their eyes. So he turns himself about from them because he couldn't take it no more. And he gets so caught up in the emotion from hearing his brothers talk about the situation, hearing them express guilt for what they had did, hearing his oldest brother Reuben confess that he at least tried to talk him out of it. And this made Joseph shed a tear. It made Joseph do more to shed a tear. He said he wept. Now, he wept just like Jesus wept. And to weep is a much deeper cry than shedding a tear. So, but he had to turn away to do it because he was the man. He was the man in charge, and he couldn't be seen as being weak because tears is going to make him seem weak. And besides, he had this whole retinue around him. Thanks, Alex, the word girl. He had this whole retinue around him, so he had to keep his cool. He had to keep his demeanor. And so Joseph was so overcome with emotion as he understood, the work of God and what God was doing to the conscience of his brothers. God had to do a deep work in their hearts in order for their relationship to be reconciled. And for one, see, there wasn't this kind of reconciliation was not going to happen quick and easy. It couldn't be we sorry, Joseph. It wasn't that kind of situation. You know how some people just want to say sorry and move on and like it never happened. And now they don't even say I'm sorry anymore. They just say sorry. But God had these events to happen so the brothers could see their own sin clearly and repent in front of Joseph before their relationship could be resolved. And so I also need you to see that before the restoration of him and their brothers, Joseph didn't allow himself to have bitterness and hatred for his brothers. He still loved his brothers, and he still wanted to be with them, because you can see that in the next part of the verse. The next part of the verse says, he returned to them again after he was crying, and he talked with them. He communed with them. He wasn't happy about the misery that they were going through, but in some ways it was necessary that they went through it, right? So next, he has Simeon bound before their eyes, and I think he kind of did this for effect. He wanted them to see what he was doing to their brother, to show how serious he was, and that Simeon was his collateral to make sure they come back with the other brother. And I kind of personally think he might have was going to do Reuben at first because he was the oldest, but once he heard Reuben was taken up for him, he just went down the pecking order to the next oldest brother, which was Simeon. I don't know. That was just me. It's probably not the case. But anyway, last verse 25. Then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn and to restore every man's money into his sack and give them provision for the way. And thus did he unto them. So then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn. And with all the drama, you probably forgot that that's why they was here in the first place, to get something to eat. But look what he does. He tells the person who's filling the sack to give corn to all of them and then give all their money back. Not in their hands, but in secret. Put it in their sacks. He didn't want them to know that he had given their money back to them. He was just doing a nice gesture for his brothers. Joseph was the first one to pay it forward. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, that reminds me, yesterday I was at Starbucks. It's a true story. And I pulled up to the window, had my little app out, ready to have them pay for my food, pay for my drink. And the lady said, "Oh, it's all paid for." I was like, "What?" This is the first time it ever happened to me. Even though I didn't need somebody to pay for it, man, it was the warmest feeling ever as I pulled away from that window. And I immediately said to myself, I gotta do that for somebody, because, if you can ever do something nice for somebody, you should do it. And that $5 cup of coffee